and welcome to the Hands-on 7 tutorial. So up to this point we've looked at how to add and construct different sectors using the MAED model. We have not constructed all of the sectors, however the previous exercises have shown you how to construct some of them. So for example, we know how to construct the agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, household sector. The other sectors you can construct using the templates that have been provided, which will be shown to you again later. So at this point we want to look at how we enter scenarios data and how we view the results for it. So in terms of adding the scenario data, we shall start with the population and other parameters of demographic data. The base year is already entered, so what we need to do is to add scenario data for population in MAED. We need to enter assumed population average annual growth rates for the future. If we do not do this, the model interprets as there is no growth rate in the future. So if we go, for example, now to the socioeconomic data, we will see that with the numbers that we have over here, growth rate has been given to 0. So the model assumes that there is no population growth rate from 20 to 2035 and of 35 to 40. Now, when we add the population growth rate, it depends on how we've defined the model. If we've defined the model yearly, then we add the yearly growth rate. However, if we've defined the model, for example, by 5 years, which is the case over here, as we go from 2030 to 35 to 40, we will need to add the averaged out number of the 5 years to indicate how much is the growth rate. As it has been stated over here, the model calculates the total population in the future, and in this case the values are the average growth rates over the 5-year intervals. So this is one of the data that we need to add, and then there's also other data that we can add for scenarios. For example, according to the scenario that is being depicted over here, the size of the household in urban area will be reduced from 6 persons dwelling in the base year to 5.2 dwelling at the end of the scenario period. At the same time, the proportion of potential labor is considered constant in this scenario. So as the hands-on instructs us, let's enter the data that has been shown over here to reconstruct the scenario that has been depicted in this exercise. Here are the numbers. So let's check the numbers first of all. They are different to the one that I have from the previous exercise, so I'm going to change this. Population is at 19.5. So I change this and I click on save so that it's saved. Then the population growth rate, as shown per exercise, is 0.710. So I'm going to change this, 0.71. Save it. That's for the year up to 2035, and then it's 0.6. So I'm going to change this to 0.6. We can see that the model has now calculated different numbers for the later years. This is based on the scenario that we're building in this instance. If we look at the urban population, it's 41.5. So here we're going to add 41.5. I'm going to click on save. And then in this case, the scenario that's being depicted in 2035, the urban population is at 42.7. We're going to click on save. And at 44 in year 2040. So next up is the person urban household. So here it goes from 6 to 5.4 to 5.2. So we're going to change this from 6 to 5.4 to 5.2, and we're going to click on save. Person rural household difference is given at 7, 6.5, and 6. 7, 6.5, and 6. Potential labor force is given at 49, 49, 49, and then 40% at participating labor force. So 49, 49, 49, and then 40, 40, 40. I'm going to click on save. And lastly, population in cities goes from 22% to 27 to 33. 22, 27, 33. Let's click on save. So there we go. Now we've constructed a scenario and we've done changes to the demography data in order to be able to construct such a scenario. The next thing that we need to do is change the data for GDP growth. Again, this depends on how you've defined the model. So if it's 5 years, in the case of this, we're going to take the average of that. If it's yearly, we're just going to take the yearly. And here we're going to be changing how the GDP structure looks as well, following the data that has been shown over here. So if we go to the GDP section, we see the numbers that have been given, growth rate at 7 and 6%. We'll check over here. The numbers are the same for that. Here is the sectors that have been defined in the various numbers. So what we need to do is check to see that all of these correspond. In my case, they don't, so I need to change some of these numbers. I can see that for agriculture, construction, and mining, it's at 10% for all the years. So here I need to change this to 10, 10, 10, and 10. Click on save. For the manufacturing sector, it's 38.374. So I need to copy this number and I need to paste it over here and over here. This is the exact same number for all the 3 years, as we can see over there. And then services is at 20% for all of the years. And here we go. The next thing to check is the numbers over here, distribution of GDP by subsectors. So if we scroll down over here, we'll see the numbers for it. Metal ores, 30, 40, 50%. In my case, there's no metal ores because I've unselected this from the model. So if I come over here, go into mining, there's this. I can add metal ores, and then they will be added into the model. But however, I will not be doing this for the purposes of this exercise. And over here, if we check at the numbers, it's 30, 28, 25 for the commercial and tourism, 30, 28, 25. 10% for public administration, and then 5, 10, 15 for finance and business. The numbers correspond, so we click on save. And here we go. We will also need to now change the energy intensities of motive power, specific electrical use, and thermal use for all sectors. So what we're talking about is over here. If we come, we'll see that we have the numbers for the base year, however we don't have them for the additional years. So in creating this scenario, we're thinking of how much motive power is agriculture going to be using, or how much would we like it to use. Based on this, we'll calculate the numbers using the previous hands-on, so the way that it was shown in the previous exercises. You can refer back to the PDFs and read the instructions of how this can be done, and use the Excel worksheet as well in order to help you to do this. And once you've calculated it, you would input it over here to create your scenario. So let's say that we think that there's going to be a lot more electromotive power used in construction of buildings, so we're going to be changing this number in terms of the price of it that is being used. And let's say for a specific electricity use, we're going to be changing the price that it's going to be costing for mining, and we can add that over here and create our scenario accordingly. If we go to the hands-on, some of these numbers have been defined over here, so we can copy and paste them just for the sake of it. However, this is just to show you what the idea would be. So if we think that there's going to be, let's say, an increase in the price of electricity used for the agricultural sector, we could put this at 0.2 and then 0.4, and then we click on save. This is just a random guess. It is not based on anything, and this, in fact, such numbers should be based on using the previous hands-on in order to calculate exactly the sort of scenario that you want to end up with. So once we've done this, then what we can do is essentially use the data collection sheets that have been provided from before to calculate it for the household sector and the manufacturing sector. However, if we want to calculate it for all the sectors, we need to download a different template, which is this one. So if we click on download over here, we open the file. We will see the various sectors that are present over here. You can use this to calculate all of the data that you need to calculate. Here are all the different years as well for which you can calculate it for. And this contains all the sectors that there is, where you insert the raw data and then you end up getting a proper inputs into the model to be used. So there is also the transport sector that is included over here. There's the household, rural, urban sector. All of the sectors have been included in this model. So this is what you would use in order to do the scenario assumptions of yours. Once you do that, and once you have a full model ready in order to be able to do your scenario correctly, what you need to do is come over here, click on calculate, and here you will have the results. Now you can go and have a look and see how does it look like, the energy used for the different sectors, for the different sectors. So let's say, for example, that we're gonna look at this one. Since we've not defined the data over here, we cannot see anything. However, had we defined it, we would have seen a scenario creation over here. So this would be the idea of how you create scenarios using MAED model. Please make sure that you always refer back to the previous hands-on, and whenever you're doing a country case, that you construct it using the templates that have been provided for you, which will make the task easier for you. Make sure you understand how the logic of all of this works. This video was just a practical guide of how you would do something like a scenario building. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope this was helpful.